Chapter 5, the living weights. So he probably didn't invent the barbell and the weights and stuff like that. Somebody else probably did it. But they weren't putting as much effort into their use as he did. Chapter 6 on the Alba, bound for New York, says going to the USA. And someone he met on the boat was talking to him. His first hour in America. First experiences are occasionally curious, and you shall hear mine, and it goes on about that. Okay, and some young guy being very impudent. Because he wanted to take him on, right? This guy thought he could take him on. But the boy was not easily to be moved. Instead of taking himself off, he squared up and wanted to fight Sandow. So Sandow just took hold of that boy and, testing his jacket and trousers to be sure that they would bear the strain, he swung him over the 16th floor staircase. And there for a few moments he held him just to give him a view of the depth, which was so tremendous. Maybe the depth of the ocean? Maybe, I'm not sure. His word didn't that boy shout and scream. He assured him that he was quite safe in his hand so long as it was closed. But if he ever attempted his impertinence again, he would bring him to the same spot and open it. Probably throw him in the sea. And he reminded him that a drop through 16 floors, would not be good even for... Oh, that's kind of racist. It's got the N word there. Who smoked cigarettes in private rooms and affected to be indignant at the suggestion that they should clean a visitor's boots. The boy's cries drew a small crowd, including his guest and pianist, Martinez Sievking, and the manager of the hotel. The manager fully agreed with the warning that he gave the boy, Sandow gave the boy, and was profuse in his apologies, saying that such conduct from a bellboy was unprecedented. Incidents of the American Tour, Chapter 8. And it looks like he gets challenged by another youth. Is he talking about the challenges of physical exercise and weightlifting? His lion fight in San Francisco. The engagement was accordingly made and a lion fight with Sandow was boldly advertised. The announcement sent a thrill through the cities for hundreds of miles around, and in order fully to be equipped for a performance which would be bound to attract thousands and thousands of people, Sandow decided to rehearse his fight with the lion beforehand. Accordingly, preparations were made, and with much difficulty the lion was mittened and muzzled. It took several men with lassos and chains some hours to perform this operation, for not only had they had to guard against the animal's overpowering strength, but they had to proceed cautiously in order not to injure him. A great cage measuring 70 feet across was brought round, and into it Colonel Bone, one of the most experienced of lion tamers in that era, let the animal enter. Few people were present, but among them was his manager, that tall, slim, great little Ziegfeld, with a face white as snow. There's no doubt that Mr. Ziegfeld and the small company felt the position acutely, for though personally Sandow had confidence in himself and confidence of victory, was always half a battle won, yet those around were by no means sure of the issue, and there was some fear that his first fight with the lion might be his last. The lion might tear him to bits and eat him up, right? However, his purpose being fixed, he entered the cage unarmed and stripped to the waist. The lion, with fury in his eyes, crouched down ready to spring. Having read a good deal of the methods of the lion, or a lion, he was not unprepared for this form of attack. As he made his last strain for a tremendous leap, Sandow stepped sharply to the side and he missed his mark. Turning quickly before he had time fully to recover, he caught him round the throat with his left arm and round the middle with his right. By this means, though his weight was 530 pounds, Sandow lifted him as high as his shoulder, gave him a good hug to assure him that it was necessary to respect him, and tossed him onto the floor. Thus outdone at his first attempt, the lion roared with rage. Rushing fiercely towards Sandow, he raised his huge paw to strike a heavy blow at Sandow's head. For the moment, feeling the swish of the lion's paw as it passed his face, he really thought that Colonel Bones' remark that he would knock his head off would prove true. That the lion would knock his head off. Luckily, Sandow dodged his head just in time and got a good grip around the lion's body, with his chest touching his and his feet over his shoulders. Now came the tussle. The more he hugged him, the more he scratched and tore, and though his feet were mittened, he tore through Sandow's tights and parts of his skin. But he got him as in a vice, as efforts to get away were fruitless. Choosing an opportune moment, Sandow flung him off him. Colonel Bone and his manager shouted to Sandow to come out of the cage, as he had done enough, and the lion's rage was unbounded. But Sandow was determined, however, before he left to try just one other feat. Moving away from the lion, he stood with his back towards him, thus inviting him to jump on him. He had not to wait many moments. He sprang right on his back, throwing up his arms. Sandow gripped his head, then caught him firmly by the neck, and in one motion shot him clean over his own head to the ground before him. Colonel Bone rushed into the cage, snapping 2 revolvers to keep the lion off, and Sandow came up, legs torn, his neck scratched, and with scratches all over his body, but he felt that he had mastered that lion, and that he should have little difficulty in mastering him again at the performance that was to be given next day in public. When the hour for the fight came, the huge tent which held 20,000 people, was literally packed in every part. The cage with the lion was outside, and whilst he was being mittened and muzzled, he became so furious that he broke 2 iron chains that bound him and got loose. The people shrieked. The very men who a moment before had been boasting of their bravery were the first to fly. They took flight and ran, and there was a general stampede. But the moment the lion saw Sandow's eyes fixed fearlessly and firmly on him, he seemed paralysed. Colonel Bone came up and pulled out his revolver, telling Sandow not to take his eyes off him, as Sandow had him in his power. Whilst they both remained motionless, the cage was brought near his head, and by a dexterous movement, Sandow had him over on his back, and once more he was a prisoner. The keepers tried again to mitten him, and after a great struggle, they succeeded. Then came the scene in the arena. The lion appeared first, and as Sandow entered, the whole place shook with cheers and applause. To the whole of that vast assembly ran a feel of great excitement, etc., etc., and he ends up defeating the lion. Though I lifted the lion up and walked around the arena with him on my shoulders, the lion remained as firm as a rock and as quiet as a lamb. The fierce fight at the rehearsal had subdued his courage. He was clearly conquered. Sandow was afraid that his audience would be disappointed with the comparative tameness of the proceedings, but on the contrary, everyone seemed thoroughly satisfied, and the lion fight with Sandow was long the talk of that day in San Francisco. Further incidents of the tour. They lost their money for some reason. Chapter 11, his dog Sultan ended the tour. And he received many more challenges during his tour. But he made, by the looks of it, $10,000. And he returns to England, engaging fresh talent for his company, and invented and practiced some new feats of strength, including that which he entitled the Roman horse exercise, and that in which two people drove over him with a horse and chariot. Afterwards he paid a short return visit to America to fulfill certain engagements, and then came back again to London. Weapon here. 2 men were arrested for burgling. He just did 19 years. He came out because he shot a man. Unfortunate enough to wake him up while he was rifling his room while he was going through his room stealing his stuff. 2 men were arrested. 4 of the $20 pieces were found on him. How much did he lose? Because he had this gold watch, right? Somebody gave him something like that. An authoritative figure in the other book that I read about him. And somebody pinched it, and they says, "Oh, how much was it worth?" He said 500 or 800 pounds. Okay, he said 500 pounds by the look of it. 5,000 pounds. He'd willingly part with it. Seeing that it is worth so much, he said, "I'll try to get it for you if you will promise to give me 800 pounds. So he realised the situation, and the detective was in league with the burglars, who themselves had owned that court that they knew where the watch was, though they refused flatly to give the information. Feeling disgusted with the man who could thus play so false and mean a game, Sandow took him by the neck and trousers and sent him flying through the door. From that day to this, he's never seen anything of his watch. There's no doubt lost to him forever. If he had had his dog with him that night, it would never been stolen, for no burglar would have got past Sultan, however clever they might be at picking locks." And he received several more challenges during his American tour. And then after his first tour, he went back to England, and then returned to America later on. It's performance at the present time, at that particular time, a certain date. Something about a bridge on his chest weighing 800 pounds, and over this bridge 2 persons drive a horse and chariot, making a total weight of about 3,200 pounds. And he composed a musical march entitled Marche de Athletes, as well as a waltz Sandow and other pieces which musicians had been kind enough to commend for their brightness and originality. So what if that anyone made a recording of that? That would be interesting to hear. Might be able to find it on Internet Archive or something like that. I'm not really sure. Chapter 3, these is measurements, Sandow's measurements and strength, and an advertisement for his School of Physical Culture in London. And then he talks about probably people's testimonies, what they've become using his system probably. Another advertisement, important notice, physical culture, probably in an ad in some sort of magazine. And here's some more here. Articles by Eugene Sandow and so forth. Inquiry department, he'd reply, or someone would reply back free of charge. Competition. What's this order form? The manager, physical culture, etc. please send me Physical Culture. It's probably a book or a magazine or something you could buy for a certain price, right? Real cheap. Instruction by post. He'd send you step by step via your mail, your address, the mailbox, the theory of physical education. That's how much it was worth. 3 shillings in those days. Very cheap in those days. Official crest, badges and honour. So forth. More advertising. Okay, that's the end of that particular book. We hope that you enjoyed this video as much as we have bringing it to you about this awesome guy, Sandow, from the 1800s to the 1900s, and how he created exercises for physical development and went up against all these challenges, wrestlers, etc., and defeated them. How he went from poverty to wealth, and then through bad luck, circumstances, etc., went back to being homeless, hungry. Then he came across someone who did a show with him or something, and he got some money. He's picking up his wealth, and then something, a misfortune would come along, and he'd be back in that situation, backwards and forwards, until he became popular and he had all this money, right? He wasn't one wanting to be a professional or seen as a professional or cast as a professional. He'd rather stay an amateur. He didn't need all that attention. He wasn't really into the money, but eventually he felt he needed it, right? Because he had so many episodes where he was had money, came into money, then he was poor, came into money, then he was poor, yeah, misfortunes like that. So he realised the value of it. At some point he did go professional, but he really didn't like it, so he might have gone back to being just remaining an amateur, etc., etc. So we hope that you enjoyed this video as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did, subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments below this video. We'll get back to you on those as soon as we can. And then go share this video about this creator of physical development, etc. An awesome man, very strong, physically fit, buff, etc. He's like this 1800, 1900 Bruce Lee without the martial arts. He was more adept in wrestling, etc.